right. Okay, are we ready to go, Thomas? You good?
Looks like everybody's filtering in. I think we should start.
All right, perfect. Thanks for joining us today, guys. Really appreciate everybody making the time today to be on this webinar because it means that we actually care about people and we care about getting the right team and the right place to drive peak performance at the right time. And I know everybody's goal nowadays, especially in the world that we live in, is about driving performance and driving the right culture and driving the right retention. A quick introduction. My name is Jason Taylor. I'm a managing principal for Predictive Success. I work with companies to get organizational alignment from their strategy to business results. Why teams are important to me? Simply the right team always drives revenue, but more importantly, creates the right culture. And culture drives revenue as well. So we get the right culture going. You can see the dollars coming to our bottom line. My right-hand person on this call will be Thomas. Thomas, take 2 seconds to introduce yourself if you could.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Thomas McIntosh. I work as a consultant at Predictive Success, mostly doing the predictive index science, behavioral science, and implementation. And teams are important to me because, after working with hundreds of companies, the biggest thing we see is teams are the driving factor behind success. The right team always wins. So that's why teams are important to me.
Awesome. Thanks, Thomas. Appreciate that. So let's talk about who we are. So we'll introduce Predictive Success and what we do. So first, we're a category leader in a category called talent optimization. Okay, we empower leaders with our software to help grow their team, but not only grow their team, their existing team, but making sure that the key people that are coming onto their team are a right fit. And what I mean by right fit is a person that will do the role. Okay, and that's a key word there. Will and can. Okay, will you do a role is totally different than can you do a role. A lot of people can do different roles. There's a lot of smart people on this call. Will you do a role is a totally different question. Will you do it over and over, day after day, night after night, week after week, therefore increasing our culture, our productivity, and our retention and driving our bottom line once again. So we do align people with the business strategies to achieve competitive advantage. We're going to show you a stat a little further on in this presentation that just shows you how important competitive advantage is with talent optimization and how it actually helps you win. We have trusted advisors and over 600 clients in North America. We're a #1 certified partner of Predictive Index, and we're globally renowned. And then finally, we're located in Toronto. It's called Whitby, Ontario. It's 30 minutes east of Toronto. I always say Toronto because a lot of people don't know where Whitby is. So it's 30 minutes east of Toronto, and that's where I am right now in our headquarters. Get the most out of this virtual session. Use the chat at any time. Speak up, raise your hand. Hannah Burke, who is on our call as well, will be monitoring the chat and letting us know if there's any questions. We also will have questions at the end of the session that we'll be able to answer, and Hannah will read those out aloud so we can all make sure we get everything we need from this webinar. Quick CEO poll. What are you seeing in your business today? Okay. Is it flat sales post the crisis and during the crisis? Is it harder to close post the COVID world? Have the customer needs shifted, right? Probably. Customers are different now. Guests are different now. People have different needs. Are we, trying to give some clients some space right now? They're struggling, so we don't need to close right now. How do we deal with that? Is it hard to transition to virtual sales? A lot of people we're seeing in our clients are struggling with that. It's a different world. We're connecting in different ways. We're not having lunches out. We're not having cocktail hours. We're doing a lot on Zoom and telephone. So how do we adapt to that? How's the sales force doing? Are they motivated or unmotivated, right? A lot of unmotivated salespeople out there. It's hard to stay motivated when you're isolated or your customer or guest or client doesn't really want to talk right now. They're just trying to stay afloat. And then, industry is in a state of transformation, right? Everybody's changing right now. So we'll do a quick CEO poll, leader poll, I like to call it. Hannah, if you could let us know. There it is. It's up. If you could check which one's affecting your business the most. Hannah, can they vote right now? I don't see any votes coming in.
Yep, 7 of 9 people have voted.
Okay, perfect. We'll wait 30 more seconds to see the other two, and then we'll go from there.
Thomas, can you see that up on your screen?
I can. Yep.
Okay, perfect. What's the answer, Thomas?
Hannah, can you just share the results there? There we go.
Beautiful. So flat sales, well, harder to close post sales. Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one. That was on our last session as well. Customer needs have shifted 100%. Trying to give clients space. Yeah, it's tricky right now, right? We're trying to give people a little more time and trying to be empathetic, which is a very important trait to their life and how that's going. Harder to transition. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Gives us some great framework. Perfect. Let's talk about that for a second. So that all leads into this slide here. So we all have business strategies. Usually, a couple months before our fiscal starts, we create our strategy. What are we going to do this year differently or the same? What worked? What didn't work? And what do we need to do to drive some results? That business strategy, in turn, is to obviously get the business results. Okay. Here's the problem. The stuff in the middle is what we forget about the most. The stuff in the middle is what gets us to the results. Okay. We have our list of to-dos. We have our agenda on how to do each one of those items to drive to our business results, but we forget about the things in the middle. And the things in the middle are all about people, right? So do we have the right design for our company? Is the structure properly? Do we have the right teams? Are the right leaders in place? Do we have the right headcount? Have we hired properly? Okay, and we're going to talk about that shortly. Have we hired properly for someone to come into our organization that will do the role and wants to do the role? And more importantly, have we inspired our current team properly? Okay, what makes them tick? Okay, how do I adjust myself to make sure that my team is performing and I'm hitting the right spots in their head and their heart to make them drive the business forward? And that all comes to understanding the whole person. Okay, when I talk about the whole person, I talk about the head. Okay, the head, we're talking about behavioral drives and cognitive ability / agility, learning speed. Okay, this is where we determine what motivates somebody. And what I mean by that is when somebody has a drive creates a need creates a behavior. If I can predict the drives and the needs, I can predict the behavior. Okay, we talk about the heart. That's where our values, our passions, our shared beliefs are. That's a key part as well, making sure that I understand the person and who that whole person is to make sure I can lead them differently or do more of what they want. And then finally, we have the briefcase. That's the experience, that's the education, that's the knowledge, right? All three create the whole person. Therefore, all three drive performance. I want to talk about the head for a second. Okay, we talked about this. So people have drives. Okay, and if I have a drive creates a need. And if I have a need, I can determine how that person's going to behave. Okay, if I only see how they behave, I'm guessing at the drives and needs. Okay, so if I only see how they behave, I'm guessing at the drives and needs. That's a key thing that we need to figure out, especially in teams when we're building teams. Well, what if I can measure this? What if I can measure what makes a person feel a certain way and how they get that drive? Then I can actually predict these. Okay, and that's powerful. That's when we turn our average team into a high-performing team. That's when we take an okay performer and we make that person excel. That's when we figure out what is everybody's aha moment to make sure that I can make that person perform. Let's talk about that. We often talk about 4 factors of disengagement. Okay, you'll see the red line there. That's not where we want to be. The red line is somebody who comes to work and they do what they have to do. They do minimum requirements. They do it because they need a paycheck, but they're not enjoying it. Okay, the green line is what we want to do. This is an employee that's engaged. This is an employee that has bought in. It's not just about an investment, it's about an emotional investment now. It doesn't feel like work. But there's 4 factors to take away from that, okay? And those factors are right there for you. Job fit. Am I in the right job? Do I enjoy doing this job? Is it a right fit for me? Is there a career path for me with this job? What's the next step after this job? Manager. Okay, let's talk about the manager for a while. This is one of the biggest factors that people actually leave businesses for. And I promise you, when they say they're leaving for a bigger paycheck across the street, that might have something to do with it. It might be a bit of the decision, but 9 times out of 10, I promise you it's the manager. Okay, they just don't think the manager sees what they need them to see. That manager doesn't understand how they behave. That manager doesn't understand where they want to go. Okay, so it's very key to make sure our leaders in the organizations are self-aware. Not only are they self-aware about themselves, but they're aware of how their factors and their behaviors affect other people. People also leave for culture. Okay, it's just not a fit. Okay, it's it's a company that I'm not sure I believe in, so I want to go somewhere else. Okay, and team is a big factor as well. Do I gel in my team? Right. So we talk about, and Thomas is going to talk about this later in the presentation. We talk about team dynamics. How does a team effectively work together? How does a team effectively communicate, make decisions, take action? Okay. The key here, guys, is let's make sure that those people on the green curve aren't dragged down to the red curve. That's when the P&L takes a big dive. We want to make it thrive. Every company has a different way to measure kind of how they want to determine their behaviors in their work world. We use this framework. We use 4 factors. We use the A factor. This is what I call the dominance factor. How somebody likes to lead and generate ideas through an organization or in their life. Okay, that's their A factor. If they're a high A, they want to take charge. They want to make the decision. They want to be decisive, have their fingerprints all over the idea. If they're a lower A, they're a little more collaborative. They don't necessarily need to make the decision. However, they want the best decision for their company and in their life. We measure the B factor. Their B factor is their extroversion factor, how someone likes to connect with people and how they like to be connected with. If I'm a high B, I'm very social. I want to connect with people. People give me energy. If I'm a lower B, I might be a little more reserved. Doesn't mean that I'm not social. It just means, hey, give me a little time to think that through. Let me reflect on that before I say yes or no. And perhaps maybe I read that email twice before I hit send. Okay, they just need a little more time. We measure C, their patience drive. Okay, I call this the drive for consistency and stability. More important, how do I need to structure your world to get the most out of you? How do I need to position your role so you perform? If I'm a high C, I'm patient, I'm steady, I'm systematical. I want things in order. I'd rather concentrate on fewer things than many things. If I'm a lower C, I'm able to handle more pressure. I want you to pile on. I want to juggle 15 to 20 things in my day. That keeps me energy and makes me want to thrive. And then finally, we measure D factor, which is what we call the formality factor. How precise or how flexible somebody is. If I'm a high D, I need rules. I need structure. The rules are the rules. If I'm a lower D, I'm more flexible. The rules are a guideline. I won't sacrifice quality, but the rules are a guideline and we'll figure out a way to get there. Let me give you a couple of examples. So we have 3 individuals here. We have Kelly, we have Jane, and we have Ryan, okay? Kelly's a maverick, okay? Kelly is intense, she's innovative, okay? She has a high A, highly independent person, wants to make the decision. She's proactive in her style. She's got a high B, she quickly connects with people and people quickly connect with her. She's got a low C, high sense of drive, high sense of urgency, and she's got a low D, she's very flexible, okay? Let me figure out the best way to get there. Then we got Jane. Jane's got a situational A. She'll make the call when she needs to make the call, or she'll be collaborative when she needs to be collaborative, okay? Her B, she's reserved. She's on the lower side of that midpoint. So she's reserved. She wants to take time to think about things. She wants to reflect before she says yes or no. We got a situational C in Jane as well. She tends to be on the low side, on the left side of that midpoint, which means high sense of drive, high sense of urgency, but she can quickly go over to the patient side, steady, systematical. And then we got Ryan. Ryan's a controller. Okay, so he's got a high A, wants to make the decision. He's got a situational B. You know, he'll be reserved when he needs to be reserved, but he can quickly jump over to the social interaction side. He's got a low C, let's be proactive and get things done, but he's got an extremely high D. Okay, so he really wants to make sure things are precise. The rules are the rules are the rules. So just a quick couple of examples of what we see when we take a 6-minute test. And the 6-minute test, I don't even like calling it a test, it's a survey. It's 2 questions and you're simply picking words. You're simply picking words. I do a lot of private readbacks, and I would obviously offer that up to everybody on this call to send them the survey and give you a private readback on your own assessment so you can see who you are. Okay. We also promote this within our team aspect. Okay. It's an individual overview. It's what I like to call a cheat sheet. Okay. Here's David Colman, Vice President of Operations. Right here, we can see, you know, how he is in his driving factor, his formality factor, his dominance factor, and his extroversion factor. It'll say what he's moderately, and what he needs more of. Okay. And then we'll give you a little kind of verbiage on the side that says who he is. He's careful with the rules. He's by the book. He's fast paced. He's detail oriented and thorough. He's driven to achieve operational efficiencies, and he's impatient with routines. Let's put it into a real life example. Let's put 2 people up that everybody knows, and we'll see kind of what profile they have. So I'm sure we all know these 2 gentlemen. We have Mr. Trump, an extremely high A. I want to make the call. I want to make the call every time, and the call is my call. He's got a high B, quickly connects with people, wants people around him at all times. He's got a low C, high sense of drive, high sense of urgency. Okay, and he's got a very low D, flexible in his approach, not too worried about the details and the rules. Let's just get it done and figure it away. All right. Then we got Mr. Biden. He has a high A, still wants to make the decision, right? He's the president-elect. He wants to make the decision. He wants to make the call. He's got a lower B, so he quickly connects with people, but he can jump to that reserve side where he thinks things through a little more. He's got a low C, wants to do things, multiple things, high pressure job, obviously juggle multiple things at once. And he's got a corporate hook D, which means it just comes back slightly, and he will be flexible in his approach, but when things require detail, he'll get the detail. Okay. 2 teams, 2 stories, 2 teams, creating dream teams. Time here, Thomas, up to discuss this and show you an example of how we could create the best team for any organization. Thomas?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jason. Jason, would you mind putting yourself on mute? I'm hearing a bit of feedback.
Sure, no problem at all.
So to sort of illustrate this point and to look deeper into how individual behaviors sort of manifest themselves in teams, we've created 2 examples here of different startups that we're going to use as sort of a baseline to showcase these teams. So one, Bitcoin startup, FidCoin, you can see growing revenue, 200% plus year over year, a well-awarded workplace, growing team with 100% team growth in the last year, and low turnover. Conversely, we have CloudChat, another startup, lagging revenue, still growing, but they're sort of limping along, 5% year over year growth, lots of issues within the workplace, slow growing team, and a lot of turnover. So that's a costly expense and something that's going to weigh on the team. And we're going to use these 2 examples to sort of illustrate how the individuals on the team and their connection to the strategy are sort of manifesting these attributes. So the way we're going to do this is using what's called a team dynamic circle, but you can just sort of think of it as a circle with lines around the outside. To give you a brief explanation, each of those 4 quadrants in one of the circles is going to map back to certain human behaviors. As we map individuals to those behaviors, we can start to see a bit of a bird's eye view of where everybody falls. So in this case, those 4 blue dots on the most left circle would suggest that the entire team exists within one sort of category of behaviors. If there was 2 in the top right and 2 in the bottom right, we would say that those are the 2 groups that the team's seeing. The purple bars around the outside map to strategies, and those strategies sort of have inherent behaviors within them. And we'll get to this in a little bit more detail. But essentially, in these circles here, what we're seeing is teams that are either well mapped or not well mapped to certain strategies. So in the far left one, you can see that the strategy that the team is implementing is in the top left, and we'll talk about what that means, but the team is in the top right. So they're close enough that people can stretch to meet those goals, but probably a little bit too far away to do it consistently. In the middle circle, what we're seeing is a team that's quite far away. They're in the top right, and the strategy's in the bottom left. And again, we'll talk about what that means. But just for now, know that that means they're going to have to do a big stretch to be able to meet those goals. It's going to weigh on the team. And then in the far right, we have a well-aligned team. The team and the strategy are both in the same quadrant. But the issue then that we could see there, and this is what we saw in the beginning of COVID with a lot of our clients, teams start to really over-index on those strategies. So if you're a team that's all about driving new business, pushing pressure, let's play at 30,000 feet, when COVID hit, you're going to start putting more pressure on yourself as a team, and that's actually going to drag on the team's performance. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Very quick example, so you can see this in a little bit more detail. Around the 4 quadrants there, you can see sort of what each behavior / strategy category maps to. And again, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about what each of these quadrants mean. But if you just look at the subheadings for now, you can start to understand that. This is an example of a manufacturing team we looked at and mapping their people on the team to their strategy. So you can see that the team exists sort of in the bottom 2 quadrants, results in discipline, process, and precision, and a little bit in the innovation and agility category. Their strategy, though, those purple bars around the outside, is mapped in a more aggressive way to the teamwork and employee experience, meaning that when the team was asked about their strategy, they said, our strategy we want over the next, say, 2 quarters is focused on building employee experience. But none of their people have the behaviors necessarily to naturally do that. So what did the team do? First, they took the 2 employees, SR and MH, the initials there, and they said, we need you to come up with ways to drive new teamwork and employee experience initiatives. So essentially what they did was pulled those 2 people who were nice and close enough to that quadrant that they could move into it, and said, we need your focus to be here. This is where our strategy is. Number 2, from more of a material point of view, they actually created innovative employee-oriented programs. And so this is where we go beyond just the behaviors of someone and say, what is the actual team doing and doing to leverage the behaviors they have? And then finally, they put it into action, right? Team provided the process and an employee-first playbook that helped them map that team. So Jason, if you go one slide forward there. So as they pulled those 2 individuals and said, let's focus on that employee experience strategy, let's use your employee experience focused behaviors, what they see, reduced attrition by 50%, production up 20%. The biggest thing, they had a 10 times investment on the actual work that they did mapping their strategy and behaviors.
Beautiful. So now let's bring it down to team work styles overall, okay? And let's talk about Fitcoin first, okay? So we have a growing company. We have somebody that's driving results. We have people that are, entrepreneurial and growing revenue, okay? I wanted to show you and share with you 2 teams within the team of Fitcoin, okay? And that's important because we can do obviously the one team, but when we break it down by function, we can see why is this team growing, okay? So their sales team, they're in the upper right quadrant, okay? And we call that, the exploring quadrant. This is all about innovation. This is all about agility, okay? It's very close to producing. It's also close to cultivating. We can have a few people jump back and forth to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. But what's important about their development team? Their development team is all about bottom line. Their development team is all about discipline, producing, processes, okay? We're gonna share this afterwards with you guys on why these quadrants are listed the way they are. but you can see this is why their overall work style is helping them grow. The people that are in charge of building revenue and driving the business and bringing dollars into the organization are in the right quadrant. They're not down in stabilizing when they need to grow, okay? And the development team's not up in exploring when they need to have the discipline to make sure that it's hitting the bottom line. Let's talk about our next company. So Cloud Chat. What do you see a difference here? Okay, so these guys are not performing up to par. Okay, their sales team is exactly what we just said with Fitcoin that we don't want. These guys are a startup company as well, and they're not growing. Okay, we don't have one sales professional in the exploring innovation and agility category. Okay, they're all down in the bottom quadrant, worrying about results, discipline, process, procedure, but they're not going out there and using their mind, their vision to get new clients. Then we have the development team that are out there looking for new things, new ways to grow revenue, but they're not in the sales role. So it's hard to bring that revenue in. Thomas?
Yeah, for sure. And Jason, if you wouldn't mind just going on mute there. Awesome. So now looking back at Fidcoin again, we're going to look at their communication style. Why is it that Fidcoin is developing so much more revenue than CloudChat? Well, if you look at their sales team, they're down in what we call persuading and telling categories. And so you can see each of them is sort of straddling that line between being a persuading communicator and a telling communicator, sort of how we would see a great salesperson, somebody who can bring someone to their side, but then when the decision needs to be made, when the hammer needs to be dropped, they can do it. And where's their development team? Well, their development team is nice and spread out. They have people who are focused on, say, the persuading and telling category, right? Saying, we need to implement this 1,000-line code block to do X, and here's why I'm going to tell you, why we need to do it. But then they also have people up in the connecting category, right? Bringing the team together. Development teams move quickly, so having that broad range of communication styles is important. If we go to CloudChat and we look at something similar, their sales team moves much further to the top, right? And we're getting these people's behaviors by running behavioral assessments on them and then mapping them onto this circle, which, as Jason mentioned, is something our software does. But again, if you have a different framework for looking at people, you could do something similar. Their sales team is focused on a respecting and connecting communication style, which in some settings works. But when you're a startup and you're scrappy, you need people out there hunting for business. When they're a little too respecting, a little too connecting, they're not going to be able to say, nope, this isn't working, and move on. Time is of the essence for a lot of these companies. And then if we look at the development team for CloudChat, they're just all over the place. Not really not really giving themselves all quadrants of communication, but being really extreme in how they do it. It's going to be erratic. You're going to see holes. Things starts to get missed. That's the issue with communication styles being that different on a team that really needs concrete communication between themselves. If we jump back to Fidcoin, let's look at a taking action style. This one by far is for Jason and I, when we talk to clients, this is the circle that matters the most. This is the graph that matters the most. Taking action is the reason why Amazon leads the world, and everybody else that competed with Amazon in the 1990s does it. It's because Amazon took action and won. If you look at their sales team, they are focused on an innovating taking action style. So they're challenging the status quo. They're going out, as I said, they're going out and hunting. They're fast paced. You read it there, willing to take charge. All the things that we, when we hear about a successful salesperson, this is what we think about. Development team, their taking action style is on a commanding and implementing level, right? So they're saying, this is what needs to be done. Boom, let's do it quick. The team is going to, again, move very quickly. They're going to make decisions quick and then take action pretty much immediately. And so for a growing startup, that's what we want to see a development team doing. If we jump over to CloudChat, this is where things get messy again. Look at the taking action style of their sales team. It's a coordinating, implementing style, which again, it could work. It's just not going to work in the same level that the fast-paced, innovative style of Fidcoin was sort of allowing them. Conversely, look at their development team. They're really innovating, and that's great. A development team should have some form of innovation to them. We're not saying it shouldn't, but the whole team is sort of over indexing their strengths there. And so probably there's a million emails going around saying, let's add this feature and this feature and this feature and this feature, but does it actually get done? And that's why, this is a development team. If we saw this, we might say, okay, you need some people who are going to implement commands, specifically the managers in this category. Last little graph we'll look at here, decision-making style. And this is what backs up taking action. FidCoin, again, growing quickly. Why? They have all of their salespeople up in what we call a justifying, in a justifying category. So if you read it there, it says everyone has an opinion and there's no shame in sharing it. Again, this is how we get innovative sales teams. This is how we get sales teams that will come up with ideas and make decisions based on innovating, challenging the status quo. As you can see, it says they're vocally challenging the status quo. And then it says there, each will arrive at the best decision. This sales team is working to mine out the best decision, doing it efficiently, and then making that decision. Conversely, if we look at their development team, they sort of fall along conforming, aligning. And this is where, as a decision-making group, they'll get everyone in the room. They'll say, you're all experts on this. You know what you're doing. Let's come to an idea that is the correct one in the most, you could say, meta sense. A lot of times we'll see teams, very technical teams, start to fall in this category. In development, app development, there's a right way to do something. There's something that works. Engineers, you'll start to see a lot of engineers end up in this category. Their decision-making style is about finding the best decision that exists, not necessarily the best decision they think exists, but what is the actual best decision. And that's why we see a successful development team here. If we move to Cloud Chat, this is where, again, we start to see some issues, right? Their sales team's decision-making style is very conforming. So they're going to be asking each other too often, well, what do you think the right idea is? Conversely, look at their development team. They're up there almost exclusively in the justifying category. You're going to see a lot of butting heads because each of them is going to have an idea about what the technical best route is. Each of them is going to have a background on that. It's great on a sales team, less great on a development team that needs to implement quickly. So those are sort of our two examples that we're going to use. Now, what we've done is we've looked and said, what are the 9 sort of team types that we can see? So based on where a team falls, using their behaviors, we can sort of map general groups of different types of teams. So an exploring team, right, that'll be 30,000 feet. Where do we go 6-10 years from now? Whereas a producing team will be more operationally focused. What are our KPIs? What did we output today? This is where you see a lot of really good manufacturing and logistics companies. To connect that back to the original framework Jason talked about, we have PI strategy types. And so, Jason, if you just flip one forward there, yeah. And so you can see we have 10 different types of strategy types. Again, these are just buckets where we can sort of map teams to. So a pathfinding team, right? They're looking long-term. They're sort of, a lot of teams are coming into this post-COVID. How do we build out from here? Executing teams, their strategy is focused on, we have 10 really important deadlines, before the end of our fiscal year. This is where we're going. And so between the two, the PI team types and strategy types, we can start to map against each other. And so what does this look like? So we call this dream teams. Essentially, the strategy is those purple bars I talked around the outside. The blue refers to the actual behaviors we've mapped on the inside. So will this be a high-performing team? They're a producing team, so they're competitive, intense, and task-oriented, pursuing a pathfinding strategy, right? So they want to add customers. Quickly. Will that be a high-performing team? And that's where we can get into what we just talked about. Similar thing here, an adapting team following a cultivating strategy. Will that be a high-performing team? We could get into again what we talked about with Cloud Chat and FidCoin.
All right, so let's do a case study. We've taken a close look at top and bottom performers. And this was a global real estate company that wanted to identify common traits and common factors. And again, whatever you use to measure the behaviors of your team is one thing. We use our factors A, B, C, and D. And by doing the 6-minute survey, we can plot people into the team dynamics, like you just saw in those slides we just looked at. But you can also do a group analytics, okay? And this is what we came up with. So top rated performers, top 15%, they had a high A in this company, a very high A. They had a high B, so they were quickly connect with people. They had a low C. They were high pressure profiles that could adjust to pressure, and they thrived under pressure, and they had a situational formality line. They were precise when they needed to be precise, but they were also flexible in their approach. The bottom performers of this company, they had a lower A, more collaborative, okay, more of a let's all make the decision as opposed to me making the call. They had a higher B because they're a little more collaborative. They wanted to be, they were quick to connect with people. They had a low C and a mid D. And then the bottom performers with favorable ratings, the people that still love them, just even though they weren't producing, had a lower A, okay, collaborative. They had a high B, a mid C, and a mid D. Okay, this profile is much more agreeable, accommodating. They're patient, they're service orientated, more so than growth orientated. Let's talk about becoming the best boss and what that means. Okay, understanding, how you let's say, what's your remote leadership style? Okay, what type of leader am I in normal circumstances? What's my strongest behavioral drives? I don't know. I'm sure everybody on this webinar has done some kind of behavioral assessment, but are we using those behavioral assessments to determine how self-aware we are? And how aware am I of my drives? What's my highest drive? And how do my drives affect my team, right? And that's a key gap that we're seeing in Dream Team seminars with companies that want to perform better, okay? The leaders of the company aren't as self-aware as they think they are, okay? Or they have some somewhat self-awareness, but not as much as they need, okay? 95% of us think we're self-aware, only 15% of us are, okay? And that is a third-party statistic that we had done with over 5,000 senior executives. Thomas?
Yeah, and so as sort of a natural extension of looking at teams, we can look at an entire organization. This is something that we do with clients and something we sort of like to showcase, which is if you break down an actual org chart, add in people's behavioral assessments, add in the type of behavior they'll exhibit at work, we can start to see those buckets again. So is our development team very detail-oriented and very patient? They probably should be. And so if we can look at the organization as a whole, we can sort of start to get that bird's eye view. We can break it down, senior leadership, managers, teams, and start to, as a CEO, identify the groupings of people we have in an organization.
There we go. Here's something we also talk about that drives productivity, increases retention, has companies make better strategic decision, helps companies outperform other competitors, and has a higher employee engagement, people that are actually willing to be there, wanting to be there. And that's a diversity and inclusion course and solution that we offer through behavioral assessments, right? Teams that have diversity of gender, race, age, and geography outperform individual decision makers 87% of the time. 87% of the time. How do we determine that? We make sure that we understand the biases, right? We go over the conformity bias, the halo bias, the horn, the confirmation, the contrast bias. We go over that stuff to make sure that our companies and our clients understand that and what might be holding them back from making great decisions and having a competitive advantage. This slide, I actually love this slide. So I always say, what keeps CEOs and leaders up at night? And out of 15 polled questions of key leaders, 8 of them were all people related, okay? And the biggest one, strategy development by people, that's a people issue. Talent strategy was second, another people issue. Operational execution, another people issue. Strategy alignment, predicting the market trends, and a competitor analysis. okay? All related to talent optimization. As a thank you, and before we get to questions, we just wanted to offer up, hey, you come on a webinar, you got to get something free, right? So we'd want to help anybody on this call out with a dream team session. It's a 1 hour session for 10 people. It's got an over $2,000 value to it. With that, 10 people that took the assessment, I would give them a personal readback of their assessment. So a half hour with me where I talk about their behaviors, their strengths of their behaviors, any blind spots they may see, and just kind of management strategies based on their behavior. Thomas does this as well. And then we would do a session with the team, Thomas and I, and give you a free dream team report of here's the 10 people and how do they function and act as a team, and are we positioned for growth? Are we positioned where we need to be positioned to hit our business results based on our strategy? And that is up for us. We will open up questions